Hey, what's going on there, everybody? It's Sam Legger here representing Team JVS, here to give you guys another movie review. The name of this film is called Honey Don't. This is directed by Ethan Coen. This is an all-star cast in Margaret Qualley, Aubrey Plaza, and Chris Evans. Now, Margaret plays a role of Honey, who is the main title character. She's a private investigator. And there's in the town that she lives in, there's just a slew of different murders that just keep happening. And it also centers around an interesting church. Now, Aubrey Plaza plays a role of a cop that kind of works within the precinct, and they have a very interesting friendship. And then Chris Evans plays a role of the reverend that's associated with this set church. Now, Charlie Day is also in this film. He also plays an investigator that is on the police force, whereas she's a private detective. Now, what did I think about this film? I'll touch on the high points. First high point that I'll say is Margaret. I think Margaret, she commands every single scene that she is in the sense that when she is very stone faced, very serious and to the point, nonsensical and ready to hurt somebody, or whether to figure out what needs to happen. Very smart individual, very strong character. And albeit there are certain things that they do with her character in the way that she moves, and they kind of over sensualize some things, she is astonishing. She does a great job. I believe the physicality. I believe the way she is with people. I believed all the different social quips. And I think that she is absolutely a highlight of this film in a lot of different ways. Sometimes I was just really surprised by some of the scenarios that Ethan put her in this film, because there's some very compromising situations that she's put in and very deadly. So it gets from A to Z very quickly. So from a pacing standpoint, I think that they handled that really well. Now, another big proponent to this is Aubrey Plaza and Margaret. I think that they have really excellent chemistry, very natural chemistry. I would say, honestly, with Aubrey, and I know she's gone through a lot in the past 2 years with the death of her spouse, but she was astonishing in this, specifically in the first two acts. The first two acts of her character, very different than what Aubrey normally plays. And I think she plays it very well. Like, you really get a true understanding of kind of her um relationship, what she does, her seriousness, her tone, like the way she carries herself. She just disappeared. There's no Aubrey. It is just who this character to her core actually is. And I think they handle MG as a character really well. Another highlight I think would be, I guess, the dark humor. Like, the dark humor, when it's supposed to, does land, and then sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of like when you're put through certain scenarios and certain things that kind of come up, it either really, really works really well, or it is over the top and just ridiculous. I know I would love to say that this is one of Chris Evans' best roles, but I've absolutely seen him do much better. He, in this film, all intents and purposes, is kind of like the catalyst builder. Like, they kind of have him in certain weird situations, literal physical weird situations, and just unbecoming situations. And so, even though the attention is not directly on him as an actor, the attention is on his character. And so every time his character shows up, it's kind of like a passive joke, and I just really don't need him there. I mean, his charisma bleeds through just because of how he can actually act, but I didn't necessarily like him as a character at all. Like, I didn't love to hate him, if that's the way I can kind of actually put it. Now, again, I think that this is a really good cast, and I think that they do have something very intriguing in how they're executing each one of the characters. It's just, unfortunately, it does not line up by the time I get to the third act. By the time I get to the third act, everything that they'd kind of preset up and set in motion, and some even like um some really great transitions and great pacing decisions, and how they capture certain moments that transition in between, is weird, because they even were setting up certain other characters as well, for something very interesting. Like, there's one character named Cher, played by Lyra Abova, in the very beginning, very intense in the way they kind of set certain stuff up. and it just for the third act to just not have a lot of payoff, and I think it doesn't service Aubrey Plaza's character at all in the third act. I just didn't like the way that panned itself out. I think it could have been just executed a little bit differently. Now, another thing that I just didn't anticipate in this film is this is very sexual. There's a lot of sensual and sexual scenes, over the top at times. Sometimes they could be very funny and quippy, but the majority of times it was just overlong, overused, and overexposed. And I just don't think, for me, it was a good proponent of success for the movie. And what I mean by that is, like, sometimes you can use a sex scene or a scene like how they handle in this film to draw you into a character's progression or descent. And it normally comes with a reaction to something that just happened, whether it be sexual or whether it be some situational. And there's a lot of ones like that. And the majority of the ones, I would say like 90% of them, albeit maybe one moment that was very fleeting and early in the film, the rest of them are just nonsensical. I don't think that they help the movie, and I don't think they necessarily elevate any of the things that happen, specifically for Chris Evans' character. Most of those scenes, it just did not land at all. The dark comedy behind them didn't land. I may have smirked with a few of them, but the majority of them was very no. It felt overexposed. I think that at the very least with Aubrey Plaza and with Margaret, like the scenes that they had to do, like with those, I mean, they have really great chemistry, but it was just overly used and it drew out quite a bit. And that's weird because I normally never kind of comment on that, but I think that this just didn't help the narrative, because I think structural wise, there is something here. Like there is a really interesting character dissection, especially when it comes to Margaret's character, Honey, because Honey, when you peel back the layers of her, is a very fascinating individual. I could have just had the movie just be based on who she's become versus where she came from. That in itself would have been an amazing film, just off of that. And that's not excusing to say that Chris Evans or Margaret didn't have good chemistry, or that, you know, Aubrey's character wasn't a good compliment. I think structurally it just could have been very different. And I think it just didn't flush very well with the transition going into the third act. And I think that with the overuse of the sensual side of things, it just is gonna hit or miss with certain people. I think that the way they handled the musical soundtrack, I think it was pretty decent. There was some decent songs in it. The score was okay. Camera work was pretty decent, really tight. We definitely felt the essence of the town. The weird thing is, as much as I could feel the town, I felt like I wasn't interacting with the town. I felt like it was just kind of a one road kind of thing. And I don't know, it felt really telegraphed. Every time we met like a different character outside the main three, or maybe outside of Charlie Day's character too, it kind of just felt like it was just pushed in there from the narrative standpoint, as opposed to a free-flowing world. Even down to like, you know, some of the, and it's not really a diss, it's just I didn't know what era I was in until I saw Cell Phone. I was like, I see all these different old cars, but whether you know it or not, some older towns do have older cars like that. So that's kind of what I was like accepting through this. I really wanted to really like this film, but unfortunately there was more for me to kind of pick apart than what I actually did like. I'd rest this at a 5 out of 10. I think that the highlights, again, I've already kind of given with the actors' performances. And I think that a good highlight, I would say, is just the first 2 acts, and even the way that it was framed. It worked really well. But thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for being advocate for JVS Media Productions. We have a lot more reviews, discussions, a lot more things coming. We also have a lot of content on other social media platforms. So go down in the description bar below. You'll see all of those. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Peace, people. Falling off the top of the
the skyline. 50 mile radius on my timeline. Ain't nothing on my mind.